Okay, so here's a screencast for you lads, and it's about how we can step into and out of the defensive line. And initial thoughts are that's going to involve these 6 players across our back 6. So you can see we've got the number 2, the number 5, the number 6 and the number 3, that's the back 4. And then we've got the screening 2 players, the number 4 and the number 8. So their job is to screen just this area there in front of the back 4, yeah? And essentially that's to block anything, a ball into a striker that might take a position there. And we'll get onto that just a little bit later in the tutorial. So what I've done for the sake of ease is I've kept all the other players just away from the example. Just want to focus initially on these 4 midfielders for the opposition team, the red team, and how our back 6 can step into and step out of the defensive line of 4, and we maintain very tight gaps between the back line to prevent even the thought of anybody running into space, because essentially we won't give them space to run into. Okay? So what's going to happen is, let's just pretend it's with the central midfielder there, and it gets pinged out over to the right wing, let's say. So what we've got is the number 3 is going to engage the ball carrier. Okay? This is slightly different to our 4-man swivel system, the pivot that we spoke about in a previous screencast. And the reason for that is that would be very much when we're further up the field and we're backtracking towards our own goal, we'd adopt that deep lying cover on the swivel system. But this is now, we've already fallen back, there's been a bit of play, so they've been pinging it around these sort of areas, etc, etc, and we've managed to get in a good shape. And the reason we're not on the diagonal when the ball goes there is because that's too deep. There's been no point having the number 2 there or the number 5 there. So essentially we're going to fall back until we bump into the 18-yard box, yeah? So they'd all fall back until they hit the 18-yard line. The only reason to go further beyond that or further back than that is if obviously the play's there, then obviously the back line would have to be in that position there, ready for a clearance, etc. So the play is ahead of our back line now, okay, so that's why it's just slightly different. And this midfielder, he pings it across there. So as before, the number 3 just needs to engage the ball carrier. But the problem we get there is we leave too much space in between the 3 and the 6, okay? And this is one of the reasons I like the 4-2-3-1 formation, because we've got these 2 screening players here, and it's easy for one of them to drop in. But this could also work on a 4-4-2, and it could also work on a 4-3-3. And we'll talk about that when we get together for training, because I want you boys to be able to sort of pick the formation based on what you think will work for us when everybody's had a chance to see each other. And what we'll do is we'll adapt the tactics based on what we want to play. Okay? But this is a 4-2-3-1 example. So we'll just start that over again. Red midfielder transfers it out to the red wing player. The number 3 needs to step up and engage, okay? And now he's stepped out of the defensive line, so somebody needs to step in to this gap there. It's very easy for the number 8 holding player to just step into that gap there. And then that means, of course, that the number 4 is now a screen of 1 on his own in front of the back 4. So he would step right across there, and he'd probably take up a position there, almost in between the red wing and the number 6, and that would be in case a forward tried to drift into this area. He's marking the space that would not allow this ball to get played, like if he was there, straight into somebody who's in front of the back 4. Okay, so the number 4 would probably come over in a position advanced of, but maybe in between the makeshift left back and the number 6. Okay. Yes, the winger can go down the line, but that's a different thing. So let's say he needs to basically come back, okay? So now we need to get that 8 stepping out of the back line and the 3 stepping back into it. So what would happen is, it would just be this. The 4 would come back to his position, the 8 would come back to his position as the number 3 drifts. And that happens as the ball comes over there. So in the time when it comes over, that needs to then start the cascade of events for those players to rotate back into what was their initial formation of 4 and screening 2. Yeah. So again, they're switching it around, ball comes over there. This time it's on the left wing. So we've all maybe shuffled over at this point a little bit. Yeah. And the number 2 would need to go out and engage the ball carrier, pressure on the ball carrier. Again, the gap between the 2 and the 5 is now too big. So the 4, very easy, it's just some sidestepping, he drops back and he's now makeshift right back for a time. Okay. The 8 would then probably block the ball in to the centre of the 2 centre backs there. So he's stopping a ball from coming out there. Also, if another player comes in and he's closer, he can put some initial pressure on it there. So that's why he would adopt that position there. Okay. So then the ball gets transferred out, and as it's doing that, the 2 needs to go back and the 4 and the 8 need to go over as well. So that would then be a rotation of this. And then as the ball meets there, we've kept that back 6 shape that we've got. So 2 good examples of the full-backs stepping out of the line and the holding player stepping in. The other holding player then has to be responsible for a larger zone. And on the opposite side, there, it's the full-back stepping out, the 4 going in and the 8 being responsible for a larger zone. So a good example of how to step out, but then how somebody needs to step into that defensive line. Okay, so we'll just make that a little bit more complicated and we'll involve a forward runner. Okay, I'm just going to open up the space there just to demonstrate the example. So let's now say a forward is taken up this position. Dangerous position for us, that in the hole, because if he is able to receive the ball and he turns, then he's at us and there's a shot on goal, or he's dribbling into the box. So that's bad for us. Okay, so let's say somebody takes up this area. Now crucially, he's in the zone of the number 5. Okay, so let's just say that pressure comes out there and maybe bang bang that happens. Okay, as he's run into there, the 5 needs to come out. So now the 5 is stepping out of this defensive line because he's marking the man who's in space. He's not marking the ball, it's not pressure on the ball carrier this time, he's just marking the person who's run into the hole, run into the space. Now whenever the 5 steps out, the 6 has got to just go a tiny bit deeper and just over a bit, because now the 6 really is responsible for this space as a sweeper, if you like. So whenever the 5 goes out, the 6 needs to just go deeper and just more central, because he's almost on his own then. But the 2 would then tuck in, and probably the 3 would tuck in as well. So we're trying to just narrow these gaps all the time. So we're discouraging players from making runs because they can't see any space to run into. So let's change it up. So let's say he drifts out again and you'd go back to this position. But then let's say another forward comes in and somebody comes into this side. Now actually it's on the left hand side of our pitch. So it's the number 6's space to mark. So the number 6 would step up and engage pressure, so he's marking that player. So he's preventing anything coming in there with the ball carrier. Okay? But the 5, because he stepped out of line, the 5's just got to go deeper and across. The 2 would just go across as well, and the 3 would tuck in as well, and might just take a couple of steps deeper. Because if he does get the ball there and he's good on a 1v1, goes that way, the 3 can come across to get pressure in to block the shot. So we've got a couple of examples there, and just get them back to how they were, of stepping out of the defensive line and stepping into the defensive line, and it can happen for the 3 when the ball's over there. But then the 8 needs to drop into that makeshift left back, the 4 needs to screen this front area on his own, and the position would probably be there, blocking anything into here. When that ball comes back across, they all need to adopt original positions. Same thing on the opposite side. The 2 steps out of line now, and the 4 steps into the defensive line. So we always maintain this back 4. The number 4 is now a makeshift right back, and the 8 probably comes over to this position to block anything coming in to this central area. When this ball comes here, it all changes and they go back to where they were. Okay, so that's how the 3 and the 2 can step out of line. So these are recaps now. But the 6 and 5 can also step out of line. They don't have anybody covering for them like the 8 and the 4 did. So somebody runs into that position, the number 6 has got to step up and mark. He's got to put some pressure on this player. So the 5 drops slightly deeper and just comes over almost as a line of cover to this player. I know he's not got the ball's over here, but we have to engage any central strikers that come into that whole kind of area in between the back line and the 2 screening players. Okay, so he moves away, it goes back to there. There's another run, forward runner into there. This time it's the 5. He steps out of the line to engage a bit of pressure. The 6 goes a little bit deeper and across, and the 2 and the 3 tuck in. So we're always just providing lines of cover against ball carriers and people that have run into dangerous areas where we don't need them to run into. Let's just expand that slightly, because a problem arises if they are playing 4-4-2 and actually decide to occupy the space with 2 central strikers. The theory can't really be then that the 6 steps out, because we've got too much room in behind here. So that's not very good. So when one central defender has stepped out, they always pivot. So as one steps out, the other one sort of sweeps. As the other one steps out, the other one sort of sweeps. And the fullbacks always then tuck in as well, just to maintain the gap. So the scenario was that the 5's gone out, the 6 drops deeper, the 3 and the 2 came over. It would be very difficult for us now to mark a second player who ran into this gap, and then we need to talk about that. So either the 8, the 6 and the 3 have got to communicate, and the 8 drops back and he covers. That would probably be something that I'd prefer. Then the 4 needs to know that he's a screen of 1 on his own across this area. Or if somebody comes into that spot, it could be a case of the 3 steps up to mark. That might be easier. What I don't like about this is I don't like the space in behind for a ball that gets launched there and then he's in. But that space, I would say, would be less important to us than a space here where someone could fairly easily receive the ball and have a shot on goal. So we always want to maintain that central area that's well covered, and if anything, push them out to the sides down these 2 wing strips of the field. Okay? So the 3 can step out, covered by the 8. The 2 can step out, covered by the 4. The 5 can step out, covered by the 6. Or the 6 can step out, covered by the 5.